Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be upgrading to a 3-shifter in the gearbox. Now when we do that, we have the option of two directions to go. We can either completely swap this out for a 3-speed, or we can rework this box again and change it up into a 6-speed. And obviously if we change up both sides to the 3, we can swap it out to a 9-speed, but that's a little bit crazy for now. So our main two options now is 3 and 6-speed, but because 6-speed is more complexity, we're gonna leave that for later, and today just focus on converting this into a 3-speed using the 3-shifter. Now, the aim of the gearbox. The previous box, first, second, third, nice ratios in between them with a nice fourth overdrive. That was a nice box, and it didn't feel like we were really getting to the end of fourth gear in that last race. So it feels like the car has more to give, but also we want to prep for coming races with a bit more top end. So we gonna have to make a 3-speed with a little bit more top end, and beating that 24, which all in all should be relatively easy, foreshadowing, but we do have the upgrade of the 600cc motor instead of the 250s, so we'll have more power, baby, making this look better. Let's look at ratios. Yeah, we had that 0.8 and the 125 into the 1 and 2, giving us that 0.8, 1.6, 125 and 2.5 off the 4 sections. So our top end here comes from that 2.5, so we have to beat a 2.5 with a 2.5 ratio with a 3-speed box. But our issue with that is the fact that this is the largest ratio we have access to for now, the 2.0 with that 1.25. So a 3-speed needs to at least match that. So two things. One, we have a requirement of the 2.5 ratio through the box on the final drive, and two, we are going to do a magic trick to get that ratio on the 3-speed. We are going to stick this 1:5 ratio in between the motor and the gearbox. So what it will look like is motor into a 1:5 ratio into that 3-shifter, and that's going to give the 1:5 plus the 2 to give us the 2.5 top end out the back in the 3rd gear. Okay, so here we have the 3-speed. Starting from the front, we have the Blaze 600cc feeding into that 1.25 ratio into the 3-shifter. The 3-shifter feeds into a 1 ratio, a 1.6 and a 2. That goes straight out to the wheel. So our ratios is 125 times the 1 times the 1.6 times the 2, giving us a final drives of 1.25, 2 and 2.5. So we retain that 2.5 top end. Let's see how it changed our power curve. Okay, so now here we can see first gear pulls way longer, up to about 100, second up to 150, and third, for some reason, even though we kept that 2.5, we falling a bit short. But this is where two other things come in. One, your speed or your top end is determined by the circumference of the tire and the input RPM. So it's input RPM times the circumference of the tire gives you your final speed of that. So the two most basic ways of increasing top end is more RPM or bigger tires. Now obviously bigger tires is easy to sort out, because in fact this whole time we've been running on the smalls to keep it consistent. So now let's swap out to the mediums, because by the time you get the 3 shift you have the medium street. So just by swapping out our tires, what did it do for us? Bam! Look at that. First gear pulls to 110 now, a little bit more. Second gear pulls to 170, a little bit more, but now we're getting a solid 240 on the top. Here's the other thing. The previous motor was doing 24 meters a second from 40 horsepower. This looks solid. Let's build a car and test it out. Yeah, this should also end up with the center of mass just behind the center of the car. Okay, so here we have the 4-cylinder setup now. More power, more acceleration, 1000 cc's. Looks much better than the 24 we had with the old setup, so this is what we're going with. Turbo. Turbos, a little bit weird in this game. Very niche application, I would say, for two reasons. One, weight. 5 kgs for a turbo is a little bit excessive if you compare it to parts or to the weights of other parts. And secondly, this power spike. It's so aggressive. It's like it's a T4, T5 turbo. It's like massive turbo. Spool takes forever to spool up, but once it spools, it just blows the ever-living hell out of you. And that's what's gonna add to that top section of the power curve. There you can see. In first gear, just that bam, hard spike. That's gonna pull so much harder, and then it maxes out, and then just last RPM matches. But now here in second, because of that spike, it catches up to the handover point where it matches the power of first earlier. So it's now shifting into second quicker and pulling harder. So it's shifts straight into second earlier, into the bottom of the turbo's power band, and just smashes it, and then it tapers off and luckily matches the turbo in third gear's boost, catches up as it tapers out at the naturally aspirated power curve, and boom, third, more power, baby. And then obviously the normal thing where once the turbo runs out, it just uses the naturally aspirated. So in our mid section of our speed range, we now have a situation where we shift a little bit earlier at 120. It's gonna pull a lot harder for a lot shorter. Like now we only have half that range in our second gear, but it's gonna be a lot more aggressive. And then third at 150 about. So from that 120 till that about 180, that's 60 k's an hour range. That's where the motor wants to live, where it's going to be pulling the hardest. This is an interesting thing because, like I said, turbos are controversial due to its weight and power spike. But yeah, the power spike, it's chopping our second in half, but it's giving us so much more acceleration in the useful section of the range. Maybe that shift is gonna trip us up where it's constantly sitting, going up and down and shifting between that spot. Who knows, we'll see. If that is a problem, we can take the turbos off. Just take it off. Go back to the naturally aspirated. That looks fine. But now turbos gives us that 37. That's a lot more. If we build out the chassis, that's still gonna be above 30. Okay, here's our first look at a final-ish product. Came out to the 24, which matches the old chassis. I'm happy with that. Okay, so now here we can see the difference between the old chassis and the new chassis. It's a little bit bigger and wider. So let's go over the final setup here. Got our 4 banger turboed going into that 1.25 ratio, feeding over into the 3-speed, which has got that 1, the 1.6 and the 2 up front, and that's feeding straight into this 1.1 pillar straight down to the axle. So let's go test it out.